Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Richard and welcome back to another weekly Watchlist video sponsored by MarketSmith. And overall for this week, there are 14 stocks on my radar. And let me know down below in the comments one stock you're watching for next week. And also remember to drop a like on the video and subscribe if you're new to the channel and want to see more videos just like this one every single week. So diving in, let's start with ALGN and take a look at both the fundamentals and technicals. So you can see great earnings, sales, margins, growth, the most recent 4 quarters down here, great estimates for this year and some follow through next year, although the estimate revisions are down. And we've got a nice steady increase in fund ownership and a bunch of high quality funds investing into this stock as well. And looking at the chart, this looks pretty darn good. You can see it's moving out of a longer term base here with the standard pivot of around 630, 640. And you can see the technical base breakout was at 629.35. But the breakout was on nice volume, and now it's pulling back on declining volume right to the 21 EMA. So I'm looking for a push through that moving average. And you also had a nice inside day on this Friday, so potentially an inside day and up to start next week as it moves back towards 700 as well as 714.15. Moving on, we've got CFLT, a recent IPO. Overall nice sales growth going back the past 4 quarters. It's not yet profitable, but you do have estimate revisions up for annual EPS. And 125 funds already investing into this company. Now, as for chart, you can see it's within a stage 1 cup at this point with a standard pivot of 57.99, and potentially it's forming a handle here under this high, which is at 54.7, and also under this 55 mark. So maybe some inside days or some tightness on declining volume, and then a push through that on volume, setting your risk right at the low of this breakout day. So that is CFLT. And this is definitely a pretty powerful move off the bottom of this cup. Moving on, we've got another recent IPO, COMP, Compass, and overall you can see really nice sales growth going back the past 4 quarters. Estimate revisions are up, although it's not supposed to be profitable this year or the next. And you've got a little bit of fund sponsorship already. And as for chart, I like how it broke out of this 15.1 pivot on large volume, and now it's pulling back on a reasonably low volume. You had a really nice tight inside day on no volume on this past Friday. Ideally, this would have happened right at the confluence of the prior pivots, but I'm watching for a push through this high right here, as well as the 16 level to start next week. Moving on, we've got Doordash, which since its earnings has been acting reasonably well as it moves up the right-hand side of its institutional due diligence phase. And you had an offering last week and then nice support found right at the 50 SMA here. And overall, you can see nice sales growth going back the past 4 quarters. And it's not supposed to be profitable the next 2 years, but estimate revisions are up. And you've got a nice increase in fund ownership and one high quality fund investing into this stock. So I'm watching for some fall through, maybe a wick setup to start the week, and then a push through here, and then challenge of these pivots right here at 185, 188, and then eventually challenging 200 and these highs. So that is Doordash, definitely one to watch as it moves up the right-hand side of this institutional due diligence phase. Next up, we've got DDOG, which had a strong earnings gap up here, and you can see very strong earnings, sales margins going back the past 4 quarters. Great estimates for this year and the next, and estimate revisions are up. That's always a good sign, and it's trying to emerge from a nice longer-term base. Looking at the fund ownership, you can see a nice increase over the past 2 years and 3 high-quality funds investing into this company. And for the most part, last week, when a lot of growth stocks were going through some shakiness, this held pretty firm, and you can see some nice tight closes here and no real distributed volume, although it had an attempted breakout on this day and failed that. But this could go sideways, pull back to 21 EMA, and I'll be watching for some type of reversal off those levels, which also lines up with where it found support prior, right after this earnings gap up. So that is DDOG, looks pretty good. And moving on, we've got DOCN, DigitalOcean Holdings, and you can see nice solid sales growth, not explosive, but around 30%, and really nice estimates for next year in terms of annual EPS, with estimate revisions up as well. A nice increase in fund ownership and 2 high quality funds already investing into this recent IPO. Overall, you can see it moved out of the stage 1 consolidation and then had some really wide and loose action here, but potentially it's found support right near the 50 SMA. And I like this overall step up in average volume. That means institutions are getting more interested in this name, and it had a really nice upside reversal here and then fall through, and then pretty much going quiet and tight against that key moving average. So I want to see ideally a little bit more tight action. So it really constricts those ranges and then push through the 50 SMA as well as the 21 EMA that would be ideal. So that is DOCN. And moving on, we've got Docs, another recent IPO. You can see explosive earnings, sales, margins the past 4 quarters. Great estimates for this year. Not too much estimated for 2023, but the estimate revisions are up, which is a good sign. Already a ton of funds, as well as a whole bunch of high quality funds invested into this stock. So this really gives me a lot of conviction right here. So as for chart, explosive move off this earnings report here. And now it's pulling back gently on declining volume, low relative volume, and nice upside reversals on this day and this day, really showing RS when a lot of growth stocks were experiencing some issues. So I want to see fall through here, maybe a 2-2 reversal to start the week on Monday. But this could obviously go sideways for a couple more weeks and really consolidate this really fast move that I had in just 2 days. So that is GOCS, looks pretty good. And moving on, we've got KLIC, a semiconductor stock, and overall you can see very strong earnings, sales margins the past 4 quarters. Great estimates for this year, not so much for next year, but the estimate revisions are up. And you've got a nice increase in fund ownership and no high quality funds investing into this company. And overall, looking at the chart, I like this earnings gap up and how it's now pulling back right to this prior pivot. I don't like how this closing range was below 50%, but you had strong action in the next 3 days on, once again, very high volume, suggesting that institutions are involved. And so far, this pullback has been on below average volume. That's a good sign. And it's finding support right at that 63.69 level. So I'm looking for a push through those highs on volume, or potentially an undercut and rally of this key level and the 21 EMA if that manages to catch up in time. So that is KLIC. And moving on, we've got Lululemon, and just in general, retail stocks have been super, super strong. And this one has a lot of earnings, sales margins to back things up. So really strong quarterly earnings reports, great estimates for this year and the next, and estimate revisions are up. That's a great sign. Nice increase in fund ownership and 4 high quality funds investing as well. And like DDOG, there's a nice longer term base here, and it's pulling back right towards the point of this pivot, finding support right at that level, and now going kind of quiet and tight right below 400 with an inside day to end out last week on pretty low volume. So I'm looking for a push through these highs on volume, and you can manage risk right at this low right here on Friday, or even the swing low if you want to give it a little bit more room. So that is LULU, looks pretty good. And moving on, we've got NTLA, which is a gene editing company. And going into this week, a lot of these seem to be setting up. We've got Beam, which is moving out the right-hand side here within this base. And you can see it went pretty quiet right near 100 on declining volume. So I'm watching this one as well. And also Edit and Caribou looked pretty good. And Caribou is a recent IPO. And what I like about Edit is how it's pulling back right to this prior resistance point, right around 60. And once again, really low volume the past 4 days or so. So that is Edit. But the one I'm focused on really this week is NTLA, which is pulling back nicely on declining volume. You can really see the dry up here on MarketSmith, and you can draw in a downward trend line here and a nice upside reversal to end off last week, reclaiming the 21 EMA and watching for fall through 150 as well as this prior high. And overall, not really any fundamentals in terms of growth, earnings, sales margins. This is a biotech company, but you do have really nice growth in terms of fund ownership and 4 high quality funds already invested into this stock. Moving on, we've got Skin, another recent IPO, great sales growth and margins last quarter. Not yet profitable, but it is supposed to be in 2022. And you already have some fund ownership, although no high quality funds just yet. And overall, it has moved up strongly through this 20.23 pivot, and now is pulling back on below average volume. So I'll be watching to see if this goes sideways, forms some inside days, consolidates for a few weeks, or if this just does a 2-2 reversal through Friday's high. So this looks pretty good. This also held up reasonably well last week. Moving on, we've got Snap, which has been consolidating the past few weeks, this huge earnings gap up. And overall, we've got really nice earnings, sales margins growth. Estimate revisions are up, nice increase in fund ownership, and 4 high quality funds as well. And now this did fade and undercut these lows, which is one negative, but it has held up and is forming a little bit of a tight range here on declining volume. You can really see the dry up in MarketSmith here, and we'll see if it can push through these highs and retake the pivot and start some momentum back towards all-time highs. So that is Snap. Moving on, we've got ZI, which is right at this stage 1 consolidation pivot. And overall, you can see great growth in earnings, sales margins, great estimates for this year and the next. Nice increase in fund ownership and 5 high quality funds as well. And overall, since its earnings gap up, it's been pretty volatile and it's pulled back now to the 21 EMA. It's back right near that pivot. So I'm watching for a breakout through last week's high or potentially a pullback and then a move back up through 60 and the prior pivot. So that is ZI. And lastly, we've got Zim, and you can see a really nice run from its IPO. And now it's forming a stage 1 cup here with a standard pivot of 49.9 and potentially starting a handle here under this high of 49 flat. So overall, great growth in terms of earnings, sales, margins, great estimates for this year, not so much for next year, but estimate revisions are up. And overall, you've got some growth in fund ownership, but no real high quality funds invested into the stock just yet. But as for the setup, I'm watching for some inside days, some tightness, and then some fall through using this swing low as the place to place your stop, and then a move through the standard pivot. So overall, this is my list going into next week. Let me know down below in the comment section your thoughts on these picks, as well as your top pick for next week as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in future videos. Thanks.